If you love Manchester City as much as we do, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel because today we have some big news in the transfer market. A window that promises to shake up the Etihad and maybe even change the club's course for the upcoming seasons. So stick with me because the updates are hot and you won't want to miss a single detail. What was already expected is starting to materialize. Manchester City is making strong moves in the transfer market. And the first big name to appear is that of goalkeeper Diogo Costa. According to international sources, the Porto player and Portugal's first-choice goalkeeper has already given the green light to wear City's sky blue shirt. That's right, he has already said yes to a move to English football. The interest in the goalkeeper is nothing new. At 25, Diogo Costa is seen as a rare gem between the posts, someone with the ideal profile to take on a position of great responsibility, especially if the current holder of that position, Ederson, is indeed sold. City believes they can close the deal for around $50 million, even though the player's release clause is set at about $64 million. Who is behind this move? None other than Jorge Mendes, the super agent from Portugal, who has a close relationship with City's new sporting director, Hugo Viana. Speaking of Viana, the new director has shown that he's not here to mess around. Having just arrived in the role, he's already getting down to business. His talks with Bayer Leverkusen involved names like James McAtee and Stefan Ortega, who could move to Germany, while midfielder Florian Wirtz is entering the radar as a possible replacement for none other than Kevin De Bruyne. Yes, that's right. It looks like City is preparing for a post-De Bruyne era. The Belgian, one of the club's greatest legends, seems to be heading towards his departure at the end of this season. Finding someone of his caliber to take his place is undoubtedly one of the most challenging tasks Viana will face. Among the names mentioned, Wirtz stands out. Young, talented, and on a meteoric rise, the Leverkusen midfielder could cost up to $130 million, a true fortune, even by City's standards. The price is daunting, but it reflects the impact he's had in the Bundesliga and the interest from other European giants such as Bayern Munich. But Wirtz isn't the only one on the list. Another name that is highly favored by the board is Morgan Gibbs-White from Nottingham Forest. With consistent performances in the Premier League and already adapted to the physical and intense style of English football, Gibbs-White appears to be a more realistic and perhaps even more efficient alternative in the short term. It's worth noting that Viana has been following the player for years, even before his arrival at the Etihad. In addition to his technical quality, one interesting factor in Gibbs-White's favor is his great relationship with Phil Foden. The two are close friends, and that could speed up the midfielder's adaptation to the dressing room and team dynamics. With so many English players in the squad, integration is likely to be a natural process. Meanwhile, Diogo Costa's name is gaining strength again, and all of this is directly related to Ederson's situation. The Brazilian goalkeeper, who has been a key figure in the club's success in recent seasons, has been dealing with an uncomfortable groin injury. His contract only runs until mid-2026, and so far, no renewal has been announced. City seems to believe that this might be the right time to sell the number 31 and ensure a smooth transition by bringing in a ready-made replacement to take over the responsibility. Costa, in turn, is in great form. In the current season, he has kept an impressive 18 clean sheets in 41 games, numbers that grab attention. And it's not just the statistics that speak for him. Legends like Iker Casillas have already pointed out the Portuguese as the future of the position. Other analysts, like the French commentator Verba, have gone as far as to label him the best in the world among young goalkeepers. Not bad, huh? The expectation is that Jorge Mendes will be able to finalize the details of the deal soon. If completed, this transfer could not only renew City's defense, but also represent a changing of the guard at the club. And the movement doesn't stop there. A name that is starting to emerge strongly behind the scenes is that of defender Mario Gila from Lazio. The Spanish center-back has been a standout for the Italian side, with 37 appearances this season, and a playing style that greatly pleases manager Pep Guardiola. Gila is known for his composure on the ball, passing accuracy, and excellent game reading, all key traits for a center-back in a system like City's. Lazio would be willing to let the player go for somewhere between 34 million and 39 million. A significant investment, but one that could prove worthwhile, especially considering the recent injury history of players like John Stones and Nathan Ake. And here's an interesting detail. Gila is a declared fan of Josko Gvardiol. He has publicly stated that he admires the Croatian and sees him as an inspiration. This admiration could work in City's favor. After all, who wouldn't want to play alongside an idol? And if Gvardiol could act as a bridge to bring Gila in, it could be a silent but valuable asset. But wait, there's more. The name of Liam Delap, the young forward who has been impressing at Ipswich Town, is also on the radar. City holds a $30 million buyback clause on the player, but it seems unlikely that this will be triggered for now. With Haaland still being the undisputed center forward of the team and Omar Marmush having recently arrived, there is no urgency to reinforce this position at the moment. Delap, however, is attracting interest from other Premier League clubs, including rival Manchester United, as well as some Bundesliga teams. The tendency is that City will choose not to enter into a bidding war and instead focus its resources on other priorities. And if there is one thing that Manchester City has always valued, it is building a team with pieces that fit not only on the pitch, but also off it. This explains the interest in names that share bonds of affinity with already established players in the squad. The supposed approach with Morgan Gibbs-White, for example, is not just because of his obvious talent, but also because of the potential chemistry with Phil Foden, one of the pillars of the club's new generation. This type of personal connection may seem like a small detail, but in a dressing room full of stars, any factor that contributes to harmony and quick adaptation counts for a lot, especially at a time when the departure of a figure like Kevin De Bruyne is set to affect the emotional environment of the team. After all, the Belgian is not just a star on the field. He is also a leader, a reference figure that represents the identity built over the past few years under Guardiola's command. That's why De Bruyne's replacement cannot be rushed. It has to be a carefully thought-out strategic transition and, why not, emotionally considerate. Wirtz would be an impactful name, the kind that excites the fans and helps maintain the club's prestige at the highest level. But Gibbs-White could offer something more subtle, an immediate fit, less pressure for performance, and more room to develop with time and stability. And here, once again, Hugo Viana plays a key role. The new sporting director knows that it's not enough to just sign stars. It's necessary to form a constellation that works. The balance of the squad is delicate, and with players like John Stones and Ake facing frequent injuries, there's little room for risky bets, especially in defense. It's precisely in this context that the name Mario Gila stands out, a young center-back with solid numbers and a sharp game-reading ability. But beyond that, someone who has explicit admiration for Gvardiol, one of our defensive pillars. This admiration may seem like just a detail, but in the world of football, having internal references in the squad can be crucial for speeding up adaptation, and the timing of this potential arrival couldn't be more symbolic. City is facing a moment of redefinition. After 4 consecutive Premier League titles, the squad is beginning to show clear signs of fatigue. The 2024-25 season has been a roller coaster, with more fluctuations than usual. Qualification for the Champions League, which was practically a formality in recent years, is now a real cause for concern. This raises the alarm at the Etihad. Guardiola, accustomed to working with perfection, must be more attentive than ever to the team's shortcomings. And Hugo Viana, newly appointed to the role, now has the chance to prove that he is up to the responsibility. Reforming a champion squad is no simple task. It requires skill to maintain the winning DNA while injecting new energy. And this involves strategic signings. That's why every name mentioned in recent weeks carries enormous weight. Diogo Costa, for example, is not just a promise. He is a direct response to the possible departure of Ederson, and considering the Brazilian's injury history, coupled with the lack of contract renewal, this move seems increasingly logical, especially when considering the profile of the Portuguese, young, experienced, and already a starting player for the national team. If this deal goes through, City will have a new face in goal for many years to come. And this doesn't mean disrespecting Ederson's legacy, who was a central figure in the club's most successful moments. It simply means moving forward with responsibility and a vision for the future. The same applies to the attack. Although Erling Haaland is a goal-scoring machine, the board seems aware of the need to maintain alternatives in the squad. The possible stay of Marmoush and even the speculation surrounding Liam Delap show that there is activity behind the scenes. But it's important to remember that each signing has both a financial and technical impact. There's no point in piling up forwards if the system isn't designed to make the most of all that firepower. That's why names like Nico Gonzalez and Abdulkadir Kusanov, who arrived in January, represent not just immediate reinforcements but planning tests for the future. Players who arrive with less fanfare but could become important pieces in a potential generational transition. And who knows, avoid the stagnation that many giants face after years of continuous glory. Another point worth highlighting is the style of play that Manchester City wants to preserve. Guardiola has a very clear model. He demands players who can think the game, understand spaces, and play in more than one position. This is how City became the dominant team we know, and that's why names like Gibbs-White and Wirtz attract so much attention. Both have that versatility, tactical intelligence, and the ability to adapt quickly to different contexts. But of course, all of this can only come to fruition if there's financial commitment and support from the board. The fans know that the market is not easy. Prices have risen, competition has increased, and even clubs like Bayern Munich or Real Madrid are eyeing the same opportunities. This means that Manchester City will have to be quick, but also strategic. It's not enough just to want it. You have to convince, and fast. And in this regard, Hugo Viana seems to be playing his cards well. The connection with Jorge Mendes, for example, could be decisive in more than one negotiation. Having someone with this level of influence by your side makes contacts easier, opens doors, and speeds up deals. This could be the difference that other clubs simply don't have. And it's impossible to talk about rebuilding at Manchester City without touching on the most sensitive point of all, the midfield. That's where City's game is born, where everything is organized, where the ball is thought out before it's touched. And in this area, Kevin De Bruyne has always been more than just a maestro. He has been the creative soul of the team. His eventual departure represents perhaps the biggest gap to be filled in recent years. But it's precisely in this challenge that lies the great opportunity for Hugo Viana to show what he's capable of. Because it's not just about signing a direct replacement. There is no other Kevin De Bruyne on the market. It's about reconfiguring the sector with intelligence, making use of versatile pieces, and exploring new dynamics on the field. That's why the interest in players like Florian Wirtz carries even greater weight. Wirtz is not a clone of De Bruyne, but he has characteristics that resemble the Belgian: intelligence, vision of the game, and the ability to decide in tight spaces. And most importantly, he's young, adaptable to the City style, and has room for development. Furthermore, his arrival could allow for a new midfield configuration, with Bernardo Silva gaining more freedom and Rodri maintaining his strategic position as the first holding midfielder. But we cannot forget another key piece in this chessboard: Phil Foden. The number 47, who grew up under Guardiola's wings, is solidifying himself as the main figure of the next generation. And that's why all future signings must also consider how Foden will be positioned in the team. If Gibbs-White arrives, for example, this partnership with Foden could create a new dynamic, more aggressive, more direct, more physical. And all of this needs to be thought through carefully because City is no longer in a growth cycle. It's in a maintenance cycle. The top has been reached. Now, the challenge is to stay there. And this requires a different approach. The club can no longer afford the mistakes in signings that other giants make. Here, every decision needs to be meticulously calculated. No wonder the board has intensified market analysis, focusing on players who can perform multiple roles. An example of this is the observation of players like Dani Olmo, who, although not at the top of the list, is always remembered internally for his versatility and understanding of positional play. Another name gaining traction behind the scenes is Gabri Veiga, currently in Arab football, but with clauses that allow for a return to Europe. However, City is also keeping an eye on its own academy. Names like Oscar Bobb and Rico Lewis have been gaining prominence and could play a bigger role next season, especially if the transfer window isn't as aggressive as fans expect. Guardiola has never hidden his preference for developing players within the club, shaping them in his own way. But this philosophy needs to be aligned with short-term objectives. After all, the pressure for titles has never been greater. After winning everything possible in 2023, City found itself in a following season full of obstacles, injuries, a tight calendar, performance fluctuations, and even questions about Guardiola's continuity after 2025. Yes, this is another shadow hanging over the Etihad. Pep's contract renewal has yet to happen, and this creates uncertainty behind the scenes. Hugo Viana will also play an important role in this negotiation. Keeping Guardiola could be the key factor for players like Wirtz, Diogo Costa, or even other big names to choose City. The presence of the Catalan manager is still a magnet for elite players. And if, on one hand, there are uncertainties, on the other, there are absolute certainties. Erling Haaland remains the focal point of the attack. The Norwegian is already a global icon, and his stay is an absolute priority. That's why the board has been working to maintain a squad that can support his performance. The idea is that the attack will receive specific reinforcements, especially on the wings, where players like Savio, currently at Girona, are under constant monitoring. Savio, in fact, fits perfectly with what City is looking for today: young, technical, explosive, and with knowledge of the City Football Group system. The potential integration of Girona players into the Manchester City first team is not a novelty, but it could become a trend starting next season. And this not only optimizes investments, but also makes adaptation easier. Moreover, Hugo Viana's work is starting to show in the reorganization of the scouting and performance analysis department. Internal sources point out that the Portuguese has brought a new philosophy, more open to technology and advanced data analysis. This could help the club identify talents before the competition, and most importantly, avoid costly mistakes. And speaking of costly mistakes, the club is cautious not to repeat hasty moves. The aim is to avoid inflated signings and focus on names that truly deliver technical and tactical returns. That's why the club has been avoiding entering bidding wars and prefers to work with pre-structured deals, where there is already a strong relationship with agents and feeder clubs. This approach could put Manchester City ahead again, even in an increasingly competitive market. While other giants are trying to restructure after disappointing seasons, City seems to be moving steadily towards a new cycle, leaner, more conscious, and perhaps even more victorious. But everything will depend on how the pieces are moved, and the board is set. And so we come to the end of our latest news about Manchester City. As we've seen, many moves are on the horizon, and the club's future depends on crucial decisions in the transfer market. If Hugo Viana's work continues as promised, City can prepare for another great chapter in its history, with a renewed squad ready to continue dominating world football. And you, City fan, what do you think of these potential moves? Who would you like to see at the Etihad? Leave your opinion in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any updates about Manchester City. We're following everything closely to bring you the news first. A big hug and see you in the next video.